Today we are going to discuss Victorian era. Basically, Victorian era is a historical period. Victorian era in British history, the period between approximately 1820 and 1914, corresponding roughly but not exactly to the period of Queen Victoria's reign, which is starting from 1837 and it is going till 1901, and characterized by a class based society, a growing number of people able to vote, a growing state and economy, and Britain's status as the most powerful empire in the world. So, during the Victorian period, Britain was a most powerful nation with a rich culture. It had a stable government, a growing state, and an expanding franchise. It also controlled a large empire, and it was wealthy in part because of its degree of industrialization and its imperial holdings, and in spite of that fact, three-fourths or more of its population was working class. Late in the period, Britain began to decline as a global political and economic power relatively to other major powers, particularly the United States, but this decline was not actually noticeable until after World War II. So that was Victorian era, but now we are going to discuss characteristic of Victorian era. So the first of all, we are going to discuss the Victorian stereotype and the double standard. Actually, as it is being mentioned in the statement that stereotype and double standard. Today, Victorian cannots are prudish or refusal to admit the existence of sex, hypocritically combined with the constant discussion of sex, thinly veiled as a series of warnings. There is some truth to both sides of this stereotype. Some few educated Victorians did write a lot about sex, including pornography, medical treatises, and the psychological studies. Most other never talked about sex. Respectable middle class women in particular were proud of how little they knew about their own bodies and childbirth. In addition, Victorians that few ever questions about a double standard. Men wanted and needed sex, and the women were free of sexual desire and submitted to sex only to please their husband. These standards did not mesh with the reality of a society that featured some sort of diseases. So, as I have discussed that it is a thing that which is being discussed as a stereotype as well as you can say hypocritic like one. So, a woman with sexual desire and men and women who felt same sex desire, but they were important nonetheless. So the Victorian stereotype and the double standard. Someone was there who was very willing to write about the sex openly, like pornography, but others were like who were not interested to write like some that. सो जिस तरह की ये जो स्टेटमेंट है स्टेरियोटाइप एंड डबल स्टैंडर्ड, तो यहाँ पे विक्टोरियन के अंदर उनको इन चीज़ों का सामना करना पड़ा. वो लोग ये कहते थे कि कुछ ऐसे थे जो बात करते थे सेक्स के बारे में और वो ओपनली लिखते थे, पोर्नोग्राफी भी करते थे, सारा कुछ वो लिखते थे, किसी किस्म की कोई जो है बाउंडेशन नहीं थी. लेकिन कुछ कहते थे, वो कहते थे जो ओपन लिखते थे वो कहते थे जी sex should be there, pornography should be there, but on the other hand जो दूसरे थे वो कहते थे sex should be there, but sex should be there but for the sake of only pleasure. At the same end, men was willing to do sex. On the other hand, women were there who were only for the sake of reproduction, जिनका मकसद सिर्फ और सिर्फ अपने हस्बैंड्स को खुश करना होता था और बच्चे पैदा करना होता था, nothing else that. So that is the first feature of you can say double standard. as it is being mentioned in the statement that double standard is there. Someone was there who was very openly writing about sex, and the others were there who were not willing to write about sex. Number second is gender and class in Victorian society. That is very important, and Victorian society was organized hierarchically, which while race, religion, region, and occupation were all meaningful aspects of identity and status. The main organizing principle of Victorian society were gender and sex. As is suggested by the sexual double standard, gender was considered to be biologically based and to be determinative of almost every aspect of an individual potential and character. Victorian gender ideology was premised on the doctrine of separate spheres. This stated that men and women were different and the meant for different things. Men were physically strong while women were weak. For men, sex was central, and for women there was reproduction was central. So that is the second point which we are going to discuss, gender and class. जिसके अंदर gender भी important थी, man था तो man किस हिसाब से था, अगर woman थी तो किस हिसाब से थी, और उसके साथ साथ क्या है gender and class. Class की जो है वो बहुत important इसमें जो है बात करता है, और वो यही बता रहा है कि सिर्फ दो चीज़ों का जो था वो मेन क्या था, फोकस पॉइंट यही था. मैन जो था दैट वाज डूइंग सेक्स फॉर द सेक ऑफ प्लेयर, एंड ही वाज शोइंग डोमिनेंसी ओवर द वुमेन just due to sake of the you can say the authority like that one, that he can do sex. On the other hand, woman was there who was only doing the sex just for the sake of reproduction, nothing more that. So the next third one is religion and the science in Victorian era. Most Victorian Britons were Christians, and the Anglican Church of England, Wales and Ireland were the state church of which the monarch was the nominal head and dominated the religious landscape, even though the majority of Welsh and Irish people were members of the other church. The Church of Scotland was like there was some religious diversity, as Britain also was home to other non-Anglican Protestant. So alongside their faith, Victorians made and appreciated developments in science. The best known Victorian scientific development is that of the theory of evolution. It is typically credited to the Charles Darwin, but the version of it were developed by the earlier thinker as well, and all the an ugly outgrowth of Victorian evolution theory. Victorians were also fascinated by the emerging discipline of psychology and by physics of energy. जी, जहाँ पे इतनी सारी बातें हो रही थी वहाँ पे वो मज़हब को भी मान रहे थे और साथ साथ साइंस को भी मान रहे थे. जैसा कि ये पहले हमने बात की है, आपके साथ पहले भी इस बारे में बात हो चुकी है कि जो एंग्लो सेक्शंस टाइप जो लोग थे जब ये शुरू हुए, फिर उनके बाद एंग्लो नॉर्मन, फिर उनके बाद चौसर वाला पीरियड, ये लोग शुरू से ही रिलीजन का जो इनका मानने का एतकाद था वो बहुत ज़्यादा था. और ज़्यादातर जो लोग हिस्ट्री ऑफ इंग्लिश लिटरेचर में आप पढ़ेंगे वो ज़्यादातर कौन थे, क्रिश्चियन थे. और उनका रिलीजन में आका उनका डोमिनेंसी होना, वो जनाब पॉप थे, बड़े बड़े चर्चों के मालिक थे, उनकी डोमिनेंसी थी वो थ्रू. अब आपके यहाँ कोई भी किसी किस्म का आर्डर पास करवाना हो पाकिस्तान में, या किसी किस्म का मजहबी कोई चीज़ को सामने लेके आना हो, तो थ्रू उलमाए कराम क्या किया जाता है, उस चीज़ को आगे लेके आया जाता है. बिकॉज वी आर वेरी मच honored that we are going to acknowledge the things given by ulama-e karam. Same is the thing there कि वो क्या करते थे कि इस तरह की जो चीज़ें थी या कोई भी थी उनकी जो आप ऐसे समझ लें कि वो सारा कुछ डोमिनेंसी रिलीजन की जो थी वो जस्ट ड्यू टू देयर डोमिनेंसी इन द चर्च. उनके पास बड़े बड़े ओहदे थे, वो रिलीजन के हिसाब से बहुत स्ट्रॉन्ग थे, और इसी के साथ साथ वो साइंस को भी मानते थे, और उन्होंने बहुत सारी जो चीज़ें हैं रिलीजन के कंपैरेटिवली उन्होंने बहुत सारी चीज़ों को एक्सेप्ट भी किया. सो इसके बाद हमारा नेक्स्ट पॉइंट है द विक्टोरियन ब्रिटिश एम्पायर. दैट इज़ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट वन. द विक्टोरियन ब्रिटिश एम्पायर डोमिनेटेड द ग्लोब though its forms of rule and influence were uneven and diverse. The traffic of people and goods between Britain and its colonies was constant, complex, and like Britain shaped the empire and empire shaped Britain, the colonies shaped on another. That is the thing. Victorian British Empire. जी सबसे पहले हमें यहाँ पे भी जो अब आपके सामने निज़ाम चल रहा है ये बेसिकली किन का दिया हुआ है, ब्रिटिश का दिया हुआ है. सो उनकी जो स्टेट थी वो उसी दौर में ही उन्होंने क्या किया, उसको एक अम्पायर का नाम दिया, और उनकी वही अम्पायर और वही स्टेट आज तक भी मुख्तलिफ कंट्रीज़ में क्या कर रही है, आम लोग उनको फॉलो कर रहे हैं. और ये उस हिसाब से जो है बहुत ज़्यादा स्ट्रॉन्ग है. और इसी के साथ नेक्स्ट पॉइंट हमारा द विक्टोरियन ब्रिटिश इकोनॉमी. ऑब्वियसली जब आप इतनी बड़ी स्टेट की बात करते हैं तो तब आपके पास इकोनॉमी भी अच्छी खासी क्या होती है, आप उसके हिसाब से स्ट्रॉन्ग चलते हैं. और इनकी इकोनॉमी में क्या क्या चीज़ें थी ये देख लेते हैं. Britain's status as a world political power was bolstered by a strong economy which grew rapidly between 1820 and 1873. That was basically a prominent era of economy, 1820 to 1873. This half century of growth was followed by an economic depression, and from 1896 until 1914 by a modest recovery, with the earliest phase of industrialization over by about 1840. So most families not only had a home and enough to eat, but also had something left over for alcohol, tobacco, and even vacations to the countryside or the seaside. Of course, some decades were times of plenty. Yes, अल्कोहल, तंबाकू और मुख्तलिफ़ किस्म के आउटसाइड पे जाना, दैट वाज वेरी फेमस इन देम. अगर आपने देखा हो तो ज़्यादातर टूरिस्ट जो होते हैं वो कौन होते हैं, अंग्रेज़ होते हैं. ज़्यादातर कंट्रीज़ में अगर आपने देखा हो तो वो लोग चलते फिरते रहते हैं. ऑन द अदर हैंड ज़्यादातर मुख्तलिफ़ किस्म की चीज़ों में इन्वॉल्व होना, अल्कोहल, तंबाकू, लाइक दैट, सिगरेट और इस तरह की चीज़ों में, नशे वाली चीज़ों में भी उनका क्या था, इन्फ्लुएंस उसी दौर से था. Yes, the last point is Victorian culture and art. That is very important one. More access made British culture products more important. Not only did they reveal much about the society from which they emerge, but during the Victorian period, Britain was the cultural capital of the English speaking world, including the United States, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. Victorian performance and the print culture were rich and varied, a blend of melodrama, spectacle and morality. Yes, मुख्तलिफ़ किस्म की उन्होंने चीज़ों के ऊपर काम किया, और उनका दिया हुआ जितना भी कल्चर है, जितना भी आर्ट है, वो आज तक उसी तरह जो है अपने बाज़ औक़ात आपकी शनाख्त जो है वो आपके कल्चर से होती है, और बहुत सारी कौमें ऐसी हैं जो अपनी शनाख्त खो बैठती हैं ड्यू टू देयर कल्चर, loss of their culture. But the England was the prominent thing that who is dominated till with their culture. That's all.